So everyone. In the world of halacha, there are many abstract ideas that see the world on a different plane than the everyday realities and mundane existence that we view it. One of these things, one of these issues regards chometz. And min Torah, the din min Torah is that you can be mevatel your chometz. That bitul gets you out of the problem of chometz on Pesach. What is bitul? So bitul is really mind over matter. You declare that whatever chometz you have is non-existent. It's not here. And lehevekah for the arrow. And it is like the dust of the dirt has no value. Now, that's a very difficult concept to fulfill. If I have, we're talking at a time when they didn't sell chometz yet. So if I have a freezer full of chometz, that's worth, let's say, 10,000 shekel. So when I say it should be bottled, but basically speaking, that's not the case, because in my heart of hearts, it's not bottled. It's there in the freezer, and it has this value to it, and it exists. So by declaring that it is bottled and it does not exist, so there's a question whether or not, so to speak, I really mean it. It's one thing to recite the formula, to say exactly what is written in the Mauser. It's another thing to internalize it and really believe that that's true. Because of that, we find already in the Gemara that the Gemara didn't want to rely on the din min Torah of bitul, and they wanted, there's an opinion in the Gemara, named bitul al sreifa. You have to actually burn it. You want it to be dust and ashes, burn it. Now it's dust and ashes, so now I know that the chametz is not here anymore. Part of the opposition that always existed to mechiras chametz was because of the fact that that is also only a loophole, and that people know they're going to get their chametz back. So technically, it's fine because I don't own the chametz. It's not my chametz. The chametz belongs to the non-Jew. But in our understanding of the matter, I don't really think that the chametz belongs to the non-Jew. The proof of the matter is that Saturday night, I'm going to open up and it'll belong to me again. So in order for bittul to work, it requires this sort of sophistication to be able to see that something that exists does not exist, and to be able to believe it. Because otherwise, then the matter somehow would not work. Again, this would be a difficult concept for the masses of people who are not accustomed to live in this halachic world and who do not understand its subtleties, and therefore they don't know what you want from them. What is? So in the poskim, there are many poskim who hold that in spite of all of these difficulties, and in spite of the fact that most people, when they are mevatel something, are not really mevatel it, because it still exists. Nevertheless, as far as the din in the Torah of lo yiroeh v'lo yimotzei, not to have chametz in the house, that's sufficient. Just like when we sell the chametz, even though I'm aware that all this chametz is going to be mine again, and that right after Pesach, it belongs to me, and that the non-Jews' ownership is a legal fiction. Nevertheless, that's sufficient to remove us from the Isser of Chometz on Pesach. Because of these difficulties, so there was a time in the world, I don't think that time is here anymore, except perhaps for certain chosen few. There was a time in the world when people really had no chametz in their house on Pesach. First of all, you're talking about a time where there was no refrigeration, no freezers, no packaged food. A different world than we're accustomed to. And in that world, it was possible that you didn't have chametz in your house on Pesach. You simply got rid of all of it before. And whatever was left was burned. And that was the simplest way to accomplish that we should not come to Bal Yeroya, Bal Yemotze. As I mentioned when I discussed Mechiras Chometz with you, it was already in the 16th century that problems arose because of the fact that Jews owned breweries, liquor, they were in the business. Some of them owned granaries, and it was no longer a practical solution to say that I would not have any chametz whatsoever on Pesach, because that would occasion an economic loss that was unsustainable. And therefore, the idea of mechiras chametz, which is mentioned already in the Talmud, was instituted in a formal session, in a formal fashion, and became the norm in the Jewish world. It's a loophole, but it's a loophole that is accepted and used. But as far as bittul is concerned, that always remained a problem. And it remains a problem today as well. So today, to a greater extent, we rely on the mechira of the chametz much more than we rely on the bittul. because the beetle again is a question. The chometz exists; it's there in front of your eyes. You know where it is. So how can you say it's not there? Now the Torah gives you the power to be mevatel something, but that requires a viewpoint, a kavanah that most people do not have, and they are unaware that they're supposed to have. So that's one area of. So when we recite the beetle, it helps. But we should realize, to the extent that we can, in other words, how would I feel if it were destroyed? I have a warehouse full of liquor, and I'm mevatel it. And then, God forbid, a fire would occur in the warehouse, and all the liquor would be destroyed. Is my beetle equal to that? What would my reaction be? There's another thing that the Gemara discusses. Gemara in Psochim, Rabbi Elazar. He says there are two items. Sheino b'shuso shalom. They don't belong to you. And nevertheless, also Torah, the Torah says they do belong to you. One is bor b'shus rabbi. One digs a pit in the street. So the street does not belong to him. The property is not his. He is only a catalyst for what's going to happen, that somebody will fall in, an animal or a person. So legally, it's not me. It doesn't belong to me. It's not my street. But the Torah says that it is. You're going to be chayiv anyway. The Torah, so to speak, imposes your ownership on something that is not yours. So that's another concept in halacha, a leap. The second case is chometz v'pesach. We all know that the halacha of chometz is that it is not only osur b'achila, it's osur b'hanoah. You can't have benefit from it. The Gemara explains that anything that you cannot have benefit from, something that's osur b'hanoah, you cannot have ownership on it either. Because ownership implies I can use it. Ownership implies that it's mine and I can deal with it. If it's osur b'hanoah, I can never have any benefit from it. If I can't have any benefit from it, I don't have ownership. Nevertheless, Rabbi Elazar says that this is the second case in which the Torah imposes ownership when legally there is no ownership. And therefore, the chometz b'pesach, even though it's osur b'hanoah and I can't own it, nevertheless, the person would be, the person would transgress on the issur of chometz because of the fact that the Torah imposed ownership on the person. Now, these are all very sophisticated ideas that we don't usually think about. We're not aware as to how it works. So in the discussion, the Rishonim discuss the basic machlokes, Rashi and the other meforshim by Bitul. Rashi seems to think that it's hefker. Bitul is like hefker. A person can remove his ownership by saying, I don't own it anymore. I'm mafkir it. Anybody that wants to come and take it, let him take it. It's not mine. We're going to have now in Shviz that we have to be mafkir our peiros. When the Shnas Abiyah, when the time of the beer comes. I don't own it anymore. And I can do that by saying something. By saying it's hefker. The Gemara discusses whether after I make it hefker, I can reacquire it. In other words, I'm equal to everybody else. So then I can take it back. Is that a denial of hefker or not? Now, these are all very sophisticated ideas. Bitul is because of hefker. The other meforshim, the Rambam and the others don't agree that it's because of hefker. They say that bitul is bitul. You nullify it. So in any event, just like I can remove my ownership, so too does the Torah impose upon the ownership, which is again Chometz b'Pesach. So Chometz b'Pesach is the example of somehow removing ownership simply by saying something, nevertheless imposing ownership, because the Torah gave us this mitzvah, the love of Bal Yeroy and Bal Yemotze. So in Jewish thought, there's a great deal of discussion regarding these ideas. Imposing ownership, removing ownership. How does the Torah do that? But it's all based on the simple idea that the Torah operates in a different world reality than the one that we're accustomed to. And therefore, it's not to be measured by our reality, but that it's to be measured by the reality of the Torah's world. In the reality of the Torah world, all of this, as complicated as it sounds, it makes perfect sense and is part of the mitzvah and part of the idea that Chometz b'Pesach implies. So we'll discuss this a little more tomorrow night, but these ideas are basic to our understanding as to this Isur of Chometz on Pesach. Rabbi Chananya ben Akash Omer Rotz HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'Zakas Yisrael v'Fichol Chirba Lahem Torah Mitzvot Shenamar Adonai Chafetz Amayis Tzidkol Yadil Torah V'Yadir.